helpful. Okay, so now we'll really start. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, on this beautiful day in March to session one of the Best Practices and Outreach series, which really focuses on the values and goals of outreach. It's kind of, where are we all starting from? Let's get on the same page. And then really gets deeper into engagement, which is really what it's about in outreach. As you all know, it's about the relationships. So Andrea White and I are from Housing Innovations. We have a lot of direct service experience. We're practitioners, social workers. We have an enormous respect for your work. You are working with some of the most complicated clinical pictures that your communities have, and doing really difficult work trying to solve people's housing problems in a difficult market and with difficult backgrounds and other things. So we have a lot of respect for you and your time. So our goals for this session are to be lively, have a little fun, maybe make you laugh a little, give you a chance to talk and connect to new people, and provide things that are going to be useful to you right away, not be in some tower somewhere, but really talk about the nuts and bolts and the work, talk about and be relevant to you. Molly said this in her introduction. This is really your time. And we know your time is so valuable and you'll be backed up after the training. So please really want to reinforce that, encourage you to speak up, put questions in the chat, put comments. We have a lot of opportunity for you to have input, but don't sit with any question, just get it out. And if we're going to cover something more deeply in a future session, because we do have lots of training for you, we'll, take it on briefly, but we'll let you know that. So, but please really see this time as yours. We love to see your faces if you want to keep your cameras on. But we also know some days you're not camera ready, so we totally get it. If you have a special way you want to be addressed, I see many of you have already got your names up there, but if there's something special, anybody wants to be called Superman or whatever, your name, as you'd like to be addressed as your screen name. Andrea's going to pop the slides in the chat if she hasn't done that already.
Done it.
And I mentioned the interaction. I know sometimes there's been some issues with some people don't have a mic on their computer. So in the next slide, we have a call-in number. So if you need to call in so you could participate in the discussions, we hope you can do that.
Yeah, it's particularly important. The discussions we're referring to is we'd love for you to participate in all the discussions, but the small groups in particular, you're going to need that phone number.
Okay, great. So we're scheduled for 2 sessions and we will end on time. We do have some reference slides at the end for you, and that will be true of all of our trainings. So here's the slide for how to join by phone if you don't have a microphone on your computer. There's a phone number and an ID and a passcode. Okay. So it's a little bit of a big group, 57 people, to do individual introductions, although we would love to talk with each one of you and hear about your work. But if you could, just so people know who's in the room, this, like I said, an opportunity to make connections with folks from other teams and jurisdictions, your agency and your role or title, where you are in Connecticut, because this is a statewide meeting. So we have folks from everywhere, and something that makes you smile. We can't smile enough. It's so good for our mental health. It's been hard lately, some days to smile, I know, but there's a little puppy there, always makes me smile. Some flowers that always make me smile. No one can have too many fresh flowers in their life. It's one of my mantras. Right? Okay, I'm getting a few smiles. Good. I'm glad you're here with us. We are so happy to be doing this training. We really this work is just so important that you guys are doing. Okay. So I see the chat starting to pop. Okay. Daylight savings, yes, 76-degree weather. Taking a walk in the sun, all these things we can do, except for now we're stuck in this training. Just a joke. Getting some laughs. Okay, great. We have a lot of people. Music performing in the warm weather. Yes, music makes me smile too. Great. Take a smile, guys. Some of you aren't giving us a smile. You don't have to share it if you want to, but think about something that makes you smile. It's already you've had probably a very busy Monday and a busy morning on Tuesday, and it's good to just clear the deck a little bit before we jump into the content. Oh, here they come. All right. 76. It is hot. The warm weather. They get a walk warm. Everybody's happy.
I'm
What a
liking the
great day
ice
to do
cream
training.
idea.
Huh?
I'm liking the ice cream idea because I was thinking the same thing.
The cats, another blessed day. Ice cream, yes, it is an ice cream day. Foraging, hiking, libraries, coffee. Okay, grandbabies. Oh, wonderful. Time in nature. Enjoying you fine folk at the training makes me smile. Ah, Timothy, that's so sweet. We hope to make you smile a few times, for sure. Sunshine, treating people treating others with empathy and kindness. That's what we're going to do in this meeting. Whether it's out there in the world, certainly out there in your practice, and we know that. It's when someone tells me I've made a difference in their life, and that is something you probably are experiencing every day. So today's my doggy's birthday. Big doggy lovers here on this call. So my nieces and my nephew, Barbie, robins. Oh, the robins. That's when you know it's spring, right? The robins hopping across your lawn. Okay, great. Well, I think we've cleared the deck. That's great. I feel nice and warm and fuzzy from that conversation. Hopefully we can keep it going. So what are we going to do today? Well, we've done a lot of welcoming and introductions. Well, someone likes winter. Well, you can talk about that with someone else. Uh, sorry. We're going to go over the outreach guidelines because that's really the outreach, street outreach playbook, if you will. There are a set of standards for outreach, which the state developed with a collaborative process a few years ago now. They're getting a little longer in the tooth. And those standards really give you a lot of guidance about how you do your work. So we're going to make sure you have some general familiarity with them, but especially talk about the value, the vision, and the goals. Like really what is the purpose? Because I think one of the great things about Connecticut, we work all around the country, is you have a unified outreach system. It's different in every can, yes, but it's statewide, it's coordinated. You have quarterly meetings, you have these trainings, and it really is everyone rowing in the same direction. So we'll go over that part of it where we row into. And then, as I said before, we're going to dive deeper into engagement, engaging people, identifying people, building relationships, and maintaining that client-centered approach. And then we'll share some additional resources. And as we said earlier, we have polls and we have some breakouts. So for the first poll, okay, we're going to get a little sense of who's in the room beyond how many of you like summer and weather, seems to be very, very, very many people. Okay. So the first poll, it's two questions. How long have you been in your current position? So where you're actually doing now, less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 6 months to a year, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 7, more than 7 years. And then how much experience do you have in street outreach work? And that's more global, and that may be in different positions that you've held. Less than a year, 1 to 3 years, more 3 to 5 years, more than 5 years, and I forget what's that last one. Longer than I can remember. Okay, I do know we have some veterans on this call who have been doing this for quite a while, so we'll see some in there. Okay, we'll give you a few more seconds. I know sometimes when you're in uh and on the computer, the poll pops up and then it goes away. We've got about 75%. So I think we'll end that poll. Oh, going up. Give it another second. Okay, I'm gonna share the results. Okay. I think I'm sharing. Yes, Andrea, they're coming up. You're 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 muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I got a bit of a cough, so I keep going on mute and I'll stop that. Does everybody see it? I don't see it because I'm a co-host.
Oh, you
Can you
guys are
see the
seeing the
share?
polls?
Yeah,
Okay,
good.
great. Thank you. Okay, so we have only two people who've been on less than a month. Welcome. Congratulations on your new job. About 10 people have been here less than 3 months, so 20%, 15%, 6 months to a year, then 40%, 1 to 3 years, 24% in their current position, 4 to 7 years. Okay, great. And then how much experience do people have in street outreach work? Okay, we have a range from about a quarter of the people have been less than a year, about a third, 30%, 1 to 3 years, 20%, 3 to 5 years, 24%, 23% more than 5 years, and three people longer than they can remember. So again, we have a big spread. Because of that, we don't want to take anything for granted. We have some folks who are very new, but we also want to count on you guys for that sharing that experience in outreach counts for so much. Like you can learn a lot of things, you can read the playbook, you can read the policies and procedures, but working with experienced people and listening and hearing the things that people are trying, because even though we're trying to put a little science to this work, there's a lot of art to outreach. And there's probably more art to outreach than almost any other homeless service, right? To connect, get people to connect and engage with you who really are on their own, making their own way, and really need to find a reason for them to engage. So it's a real challenge. But we know you're good at it. Good at doing that work. But you get better the longer you do it. Okay. So the outreach standards overview, I don't know why there's a red mark in the middle of my screen. We'll try and take care of that. Is just we want to talk a little bit, as we said, about the value, the vision, and the goals. Oops. Sorry, I keep forgetting to use the arrow. Okay. So these statewide outreach standards were adopted in April of 2025. They were released, they were adjusted, they were released and adopted for finally for April 2025. So that's just a year. I shouldn't say long in the tooth. Some changes that happened in the various iterations is that people need to complete an assessment of client service needs and initial service plan for people within 90 days of enrollment. So that's kind of a newer requirement. And there are some new tools. That document, which is linked here, everything that's underlined, you should be able to click on it and get to the actual document. So that's there. There are a lot of tools in that document. There are checklists, and we're going to share and talk about a couple of those. There's an assessment and service plan template in there. It's for you to look at as a model for your work. The standards, we've made some changes because of changes around policy, around what can be and not be presented or discussed, and how that puts things at risk. So some standards have been moved to the DEMIS website. And in this, sorry, this picture is not the latest update, but the content of the standards includes the vision, values, outcomes, practice standards for workers, supervisor standards. So I think this is really helpful, having been a supervisor, and it's very, outreach is very complicated. People have very complicated lives, and supervision and outreach is very complicated. So there's some supervisory standards, there's standards for program managers, as well as agencies, things agencies should have in place. Then there are tools. There's an outreach plan template, an assessment and service plan template. There are other checklists in there. So if you haven't taken a look at it, hopefully we'll whet your appetite to take a look at this between now and the next session of this training. So the values of outreach, street outreach, is that housing is the primary goal of the street outreach teams. Yes, we want to help people not freeze to death. Absolutely. That has been the goal all winter, right? It's been a really rough one for you guys. Lots of snow, lots of cold weather days and protocols. Obviously, we want to keep people safe and alive. And after that, the next thing is really focusing on that housing goal and helping people get inside. And that may be getting them into a temporary accommodation till we get something more permanent for them, but certainly trying to end their homelessness as quickly as possible. And if we have resources for temporary accommodations, that can be really helpful. Doesn't always work, though. Sometimes people will still decline, even if you're going to offer them a hotel room. We want to respect people's perspectives. It's a very client-centered approach, which is nothing new for folks in Connecticut. We want to respect people's perspectives, their motivations, their choices, their stuff, people's things. We may think differently about what people are collecting or have with them, but they're their things. We want to build trusted relationships with clients and with our partners. And outreach in Connecticut is a partnership. Every can is multiple agencies work together. That's the only way to do it, really, is to get all the different expertise at the table. Some of your geographies are huge, some of you are very rural, some of you suburban, rural, and urban, all in that. So it's really about relationships with partners as well. And we'll talk about that in further sessions. And we're meeting people where they are. We're becoming ally for them. We're on their side. That's the message we're giving to people. We're on your side. We want to help you get to the best place you can get to, right? That's the message that we're giving to people, and we're meeting them where they are. Um, Trying to help them make that journey from the street or the woods or wherever there may be an abandoned building, and in that work too, helping people minimize their risk. So I even just talked about this, like keeping people from freezing to death, helping people stay safe in different weathers, in different experiences, in different encounters that they're having, and also be consistent and reach out to people regardless of who they are. We're not, it is about equal access for all different populations, and that's a key value. So we also are part of a network, so that we are engaging as a part of that network. I really already mentioned that. Other values, this is really, really, really important, should be in much bigger letters, is practicing a culture of self-care. This work can
Yeah.
be really slow, can be really hard, it can be frustrating. We can help people get all brand new ID today, then it rains and it's all gone, right? After months of work. But luckily now we have computers, so hopefully everything's scanned in and we have a copy. Not as dire as it used to be, but there are, can be really big wins and there could be some really big challenges. And it takes a lot. Um, we need to have a lot to give to the people we're working with, to bring to them in terms of hope and enthusiasm and compassion. And in order to be there, we need to take care of ourselves, right? We need to take that walk in the sunshine, eat that ice cream, go to the library, whatever it is that makes you smile, hug your puppies, your grandbabies, but take care of ourselves. And it's a really important part. We'll bring the theme up a lot, but I think for workers, it's especially, huh, no, no, nothing against young people, but especially young workers, they don't always think, oh, I need to take a break. I need to really regas my tank. Maybe I need some mental health moments. But so, really for ourselves as workers, but especially I know we have some supervisors in the room, as we look at our staff and encourage them to take a break when they need it, and that's okay, and help them take those breaks. We also need to be, and this is a value because it's really complicated work with complicated situations, is be flexible and creative. This is not where playbook doesn't give you all the answers, right? So I'd love to say the street outreach standards, you can look up, what do I do when Andrea does this, right? I would love a book that would say, what do I do when Andrea does this? We don't have a recipe book, it's an art, right? So we need to be creative. Different things are going to work with different people. Some people are really going to be able to engage around housing. For some people, we're really going to have to engage around other things first because that's not where they're at yet, right? So we want to be flexible. Yes, housing is the goal, and we're going to look to how we can get that, but we want to be flexible and start where the client is. Data. So data and outreach is so important, and Connecticut's done a lot of work around the Engage app and creating a better HMIS for street outreach. A lot of communities do not even really have street outreach in their HMIS. You guys are able to do a count of homeless people using the HMIS, which is a major, major, major feat. And so collecting data and putting it in is important, to know what's going on, but also it can help with collaboration, depending on who's looking at things and who can see what across your teams. It can really help complete the picture for people, but it also can tell us the outcomes. And I think the other thing that really feeds the tank for people is seeing that people are getting housing. A lot of people are, you're working on it. It's a process, but really knowing and seeing when people are getting housed and celebrating that. And we can see that in the data. And then also planning, working together to plan. There is an expectation that every can does a plan for street outreach, and agencies are part of those plans. That plan has been updated in the last year to make it hopefully more useful for you so that you can have a way to approach your geography. You know where people are going to be on which days. I think that helps also with clients because they know every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we're at this particular park between 9 and 12, or that it's office time or when to come inside to the program. So we want to be planful so staff knows where everybody is, but also clients can engage with us and the service is more predictable. So those are the values. I don't have a poll, but I don't know if anybody has any objections to any of those values. Um, Speak up. Is there anything missing? I think it's kind of a good roadmap.
You know what, Suzanne, I just wanted to hit on something that Ms.
Yeah.
Tyson said, which is that the outreach clients and the staff were hanging out at a picnic table in the sun today, and they were probably telling each other stories. Maybe there was a joke or two put in there. And give yourself some grace and give yourself a moment to enjoy those moments. I think that is so important. It's self-care for everybody, but it also furthers the mission of outreach, which is that whole engagement and trust. And, joking around, um, I mean, sometimes we go out and somebody bring out a snack and everybody but be, fighting over the snacks, but not really fighting over jokey, fighting over that sort of thing. That's a lot of fun. And, have some fun once in a while. I think the joy in this work is a big part of the value that it's really important to us. And I hear those examples
Why are we
every
talking?
day. What? Cameron?
I
I hit unmute for a second. I apologize.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. So really, oh, there you are. You're in the sun.
I was getting ready to say, because also last night I didn't do outreach because one of my staff were out sick. So I stayed back and hung out in the community room, and we had community meal on
Nice.
Mondays here at Hands on Hartford. And so I didn't know it, like I've been to it before, but this time we had two singers that came
Oh,
and a
beautiful.
guitar, and I'm like, what's going on? And then
Huh.
our director, some of our director boards, they decided to volunteer and cater the meal. So that was a surprise to our individuals. And they had like chicken parmesan and pasta and salad. And I mean, they enjoyed themselves. They got to take food home and seeing individuals and families enjoy all that. Oh my gosh. That
It's
just
so
warmed my
nice,
heart.
right?
Yeah,
And those are the
That's
things that you
wonderful.
remember. Those are the things that everybody remembers.
exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
having some nice times together, having
Yeah.
some good times
Yeah.
together. I'm glad that Cameron is outside and anybody else who could figure out how to get outside. We totally support you in that, to be in the training outside. Remember, I don't know if they did it when you guys went to school, but on nice days they used to take us outside when we were in elementary school and pretend to teach us, right?
Yeah.
But we were really not pretending. We were just enjoying the day. But I
during
think Andrea's
COVID,
point,
during
uh,
COVID time, that's what I took advantage of because I was working from home. So I would go
Yeah.
outside and do work and get air. And I'm like, oh, this is what I was missing when I was like in the office or not getting
yes, and
fresh
it's
air.
very good for the soul.
It's pretty
Fresh air is
nice.
hmm
good for the soul, sunlight and singing. I want to just mention singing because you mentioned singing, Miss Tyson.
Oh, yes.
Um, Singing is so good for the soul, and we do have science. It says it increases your endorphins. And I just was at a meeting where they ended with people singing the Love Train, right? Great old gospel, R&B song, and everybody was smiling and happy. And when Andrea and I worked at CUCS and worked with the outreach team, we had a guy who was a musician, and he used to come once a week and play his guitar and sing with the folks in outreach. And that was so loud, but people came out of there, their
Yes,
souls. It's like the car wash for the soul, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody was just felt better, felt
exactly.
better.
And it was religious music last night. So that was interesting. I was looking around the room to see who was gonna say, and they were up there singing about Jesus. And I was like, oh wow. I mean, we have a choir, we have music that comes here, Music Moves, I think it is, that comes every Wednesday, and they get everybody singing, and they actually
Great.
go out into the community and sing at different churches and different events, and I've gotten to see them, and they take it seriously. There's a lot of hidden talent, when you go and get to know people and connect and find out, oh, they used to sing in a choir or other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people really like to sing. So these opportunities. So I think we filled in the outreach values really well because I think, and that finding the joy with people and finding some good energy and happiness in people's lives, even in spite of the struggle, right? We can get there. So the vision and goals, this is kind of drilling down now, taking those values, what is in this manual? Is support people who are unsheltered to achieve some form of housing, right? And again, it may be the next place they live, not the forever place, but some place that's not outside. So specific goals, quickly connecting people to housing and income, right? Getting people on benefits as quickly as possible. Now for SSI, quick is relative, right? Because it's like a year and a half process to get people on SSI, but trying to get people on income, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, your healthcare, health insurance, and other resources, right? We're trying to build up their resources, and you're talking about it, helping them get food, helping them get supplies. We want to find people. We don't want to be missing folks. I think it's really hard. We're Andrea and I are based in New York City, but we both spend a lot of time in Connecticut. Actually, she grew up there, and I've driven around the state, and some of it is so woody and rural. I always would be worried, are there people there we don't know about? Right. And I know from talking to other outreach workers that's a concern, and hopefully that's getting better as you guys work together more. Minimize service gaps and duplication. That's why there are, I think in every can, they're a little different. The outreach meetings, how people coordinate and how they work together. But we definitely don't want to be duplicating services and make sure that the right people are getting connected to the right services. We want to be strategic about our resources, right? So that's a goal. I think everybody would love to be in permanent supportive housing, right? Who wouldn't want a case manager and a subsidized rent where you only pay 30% of your income for the rest of your life? I'll take it. But not everybody needs PSH, right? I mean, more people need it than we have spots. Okay, I'll give you that. But people need different things. So we want to use our resources strategically. Um, Fortunately, in Connecticut, you have resources dedicated to street outreach. It may not feel like enough, but it's a lot more than we see in other communities for street outreach. So, um, and then we're really preparing people to become tenants, right? And that's a big part of the work. It's helping people prepare for maybe their first time ever signing a lease, even though they're a little bit long in the tooth. You may have folks who never were on a lease on their own. They live with someone else. They lived with auntie. They lived with mom. They live with a friend. And so we want to support people to be able to be good tenant. That means teaching tenancy skills, making sure they know what the lease means. And signing a lease for people can be pretty intimidating, right? When they move into housing, especially if you're coming from the street. Wow, all these words, it's so much legalese, and it's all these responsibilities. So helping prepare people for that goes a long way to helping them make that transition. So the transition that you're preparing people for, and many of you I know use critical time intervention, and Andrea and I do a lot of training on critical time intervention. This transition is very critical for people. This is a big transition. Many of your folks have been unsheltered for a while. Not everybody, some are newer to it, but it is a big transition. So we want to support people in making that transition. I'm seeing some things come in the chat, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
I saw some yes. And then Timothy says clients don't always understand when they duplicate services, it can hinder the process. Having two people work on the same thing at the same time. It's shown that oh, wait a minute. It's shown that when in need, plenty is more and is plenty is more better. Yeah. I mean,
You want to
it's
unmute?
oh, sorry. Tim?
No, not you. Yeah, yeah.
Timothy?
Tim. Maybe he can't unmute.
Maybe. You know, I've seen that. I mean, we've all seen that is sometimes when people are really anxious, they get four people spinning on the same thing and then they trip over each other. Client thinks more services is better. Yeah, and then it might go faster if you get more services. It's like, I don't know how many people do this, but I definitely do this. When my computer doesn't respond, I hit every button, which makes it worse. And I'm aware it makes it worse, but I don't care. I still have to hit every button. It's the same thing. They're going to hit every button, and it's helping people understand what people's roles are, what we can do, what they can do, how people work together. It's a longer process to get them to trust that, but people definitely do get a couple of people spinning at the same time.
Well, and I think that's it is human nature.
Yeah.
Definitely when I need something, I'm working every angle I can work.
Yeah.
Who's going to get back to me first, right?
Yeah.
And who's going to call me back first? And maybe if I sign up for housing here and there, I'm going to get housing more quickly. And it's a real, I think, a really good point to let people understand how outreach is delivered and how you work together. And that may not stop that behavior because some people are going to do it anyway. But, I know I think some of the teams have multiple teams know a person, right? And they do things so that people get socialized to understand that the outreach is a system in your camp, right? And that maybe you're going to see someone else tomorrow, but we're all looking in the same client record, right? And that gets to how you share information and whether what you look at and what you don't. And I know that's not the same everywhere, so you can't always see that someone's using services in another place. But it's definitely something to talk to people about and help them understand what they can and can't influence by using multiple services. And then the last thing, just in terms of goals, which is a really important part of outreach, is to have a warm handoff when people go into housing. And we'll talk more about this in the trainings with whoever the new service provider is that is going to be working with the person. Have a three-way meeting together where you can really talk about the progress the person's made, some of the things that they're interested in the new housing, and use your relationship to bridge the engagement with the next person, right? That's what happens. Someone trusts you, and then you meet with them with the next person, and hopefully can transfer some of that trust. It's not going to be the same, but it does help with engagement. And also in outreach, you're allowed to provide aftercare services. So you don't have to stop serving people, and in fact are encouraged to provide aftercare because the evidence shows that a few months of aftercare from the worker who did outreach with the person in their new housing makes a difference in housing stability, right? Having some time to transition that relationship and then apply, like if you're teaching people the lessons about how to be a good tenant, then they're in housing and you can have that conversation. And it's going to be completely different to talk about following leads before people are in housing from once they're in housing. Okay, now, oh, so you're on the second floor. So that means when you pace all night, your neighbor on number one might be disturbed, right? So what are we going to do? Okay, we're not going to wear the cowboy boots when we're pacing at night. Maybe we need to get a rug for your room, right? Because you're going to pace at night. But now we have some real life stuff to talk about. So that aftercare part can be really, really critical for people. And also in leaving the relationship with you or the outreach worker who are like the most important person in their life because you got them housing. And now I get housing and I lose you, right? Like that's a loss. There's a lot of loss. And we'll talk more about that in even leaving the streets to go to housing, people give things up. They get new things, but they give things up. And that's how transitions are. And so that extra support around the transition is a really important part of the work. So, and we'll, as we said, today we're going to focus on engagement, but we'll talk more about that in the future. I just want to say we really appreciate you guys talking so much
Yes.
and engaging with us. So, but now we're going to break you up into groups and let you talk with each other. So, introduce yourselves. You probably won't know everybody who's in your room. Um, and we'll give you about 10 minutes in the room to talk about how you came to work in street outreach or make the groups not that big. I'll make them smaller. What do you think about the values and vision and goals that we just talked about? Or they're things that seem, these are just prompts. You don't have to answer every question. It's not like, oh, we have to go through all four questions. Are there things that seem easier? Are there questions about what any of these values or the vision or goals means?
Right.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I saw some lively discussions in most rooms there. Not all, but most of you were having lively discussions. Anybody want to shout out anything that came up in their session? We're not going to do the report back, but anything that came up that you want to share with the group, we'd love to hear from a couple people. I see some things in the chat, so I'm going to look at that.
Group group was too short. By the time I got beamed in, we were talking,
Hmm.
and one of our other people didn't get a chance to share because it was time to come back over here.
Okay,
So,
thanks, Ms. Tyson.
yeah,
Sorry,
you
10
know,
minutes may not be enough with those questions with four people.
exactly.
I think
But
Anybody else?
I did give group 7 my phone number because I know one of the ladies was interested in knowing more because she has been doing this for like 3 months now. So,
Ah,
and I said I was 2.5, but I feel like it's been 5 years instead of 2.5.
yeah.
I was going to share that my team, we were talking about just how everyone is in different developmental phases of where their programs are. And we went back to funding as well, lack of resources. It makes it difficult to have a fully functioning, like adequate team when this is kind of some newer stuff too, as well. It's newer territory. Funding is just starting to come through and stuff like that. So.
Yep, and being fully staffed is also an issue that's related, right? In terms of those resources, even if you have money, you don't always have the ability to meet the find staff. It's hard work. It's really takes a special soul to do outreach. And then the vouchers and housing certificates. Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, and that's the first time it's come up, but we know, and that's actually what we were talking about before the meeting, is one of the big challenges is that housing may be the goal, but where are we going to house folks? And there's a real shortage on vouchers and certificates, and it's called for more creativity. I know from talking to people in outreach, people are having to look beyond into things in the past we might not really have wanted to put someone back with their aunts because it's been a challenging relationship over the years. But maybe we can do some work to help improve that relationship, and support them in the making that transition. Um, yeah, peer support and access to sun. Thanks, Sarah. Do you want to come off mute and say a word or two? Always like to hear from you. One
This
of
is
our
really
veterans.
from David and Eastern. They were so I don't know if David, if you want to come off, because you guys were talking about how that's been going well for you. Oh, they stepped up. Are you there, David? Oh,
Yeah,
there you are.
sorry.
I see you zooming in. Okay.
I'm stage left. Sorry, what was the question?
Just what was
Uh,
coming up. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, yeah,
Peer
no,
support.
we were talking a lot, just a lot of mental illness, and limited resources, to put it in a few words. And and I mean, Sarah, you said it seems to be on the rise, or at least we're seeing it more.
yeah, and then you called out that peer support and access to treatment was going well for you all, though.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate. We've got two detox centers in the area, treatment centers. I mean, our frustration is, and I mean, it's not, people go to detox, get a few days off, get some rest, and then they're back out. We are always encouraging people to stick with it and do some longer term treatment.
Consistency will always what I've learned since I've been outreach, to always be consistent, you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of success stories, but I also see the repetition of, going back into use and stuff like that. But I come to learn that being consistent and being there, um and whenever they're ready, man, that it does work to be consistent.
One thing Jose and I, drive a bus to the methadone clinic from the shelter five on weekdays. So just say something positive, and we have some people who are really, committed to their recovery and get over to clinic, and we try to, of course, facilitate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
That's great.
communication when we do take our clients to the methadone clinic. We started doing this one last year.
You did, yeah, you
We
started
started
that.
doing that last year, and while we drive them to the clinic early in the morning, we get to talk about what's going on during the day,
Yeah.
what's going on in the street. So we get a lot of info that way. Definitely,
Nothing like driving in the car with people. I heard some of
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's
most big details I got from people was driving because you're looking forward, right? It's a little less
Hmm.
intense than that
yeah, well, yeah,
one-on-one,
true.
and but also I just want to call out that consistency. It's so right. It's like that's what the outreach in Connecticut has become more and more. I know you feel like it's new programs and it's babies, but we've watched you grow up. You're at adolescents, I think now, but the consistency of the services, the consistency of the teams, of having workers and being consistent for people. I think it's great that you're able to support people to get like methadone's still crazy. You have to go every day
Hmm.
and get a dose. It's still like something, how do you live a life when you don't have wheels and you want to get to work and you're going to get to the methadone clinic? It's just a great resource and great interventions. And I think we hear about, and I see a few of you are putting in the chat about the lack of housing and the real need for creativity, for people maybe to share, people to live with family that maybe is not their ideal. But that's why sometimes the choice of what people have and what's in front of them, it can take a long time till something is going to really feels like it's appealing to them, right? And especially when we have limited resources. I personally would love to give everyone a housing voucher.
Me too.
Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say to David's conversation and to your point, we're starting to test out in Central Can using some flex dollars after folks enter detox or treatment because we see the cycle where like they go in, they don't have anywhere to go, they go back outside, there's a higher chance of relapse and like
Of
it's
course.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
who knows when they're going to be ready again. So we're trying to use flex funds to actually pay for recovery housing after
Oh,
treatment,
wow.
so outreach stays with them. And then we will cover a few months in recovery housing to see if it stabilizes them enough to then move into like a shared housing or room for rent situation and then just like pay the deposit after because we met with a recovery house and there were like limitations and stressors that came with using basic needs funding from DSS by like needing to meet like employment thresholds by certain weeks or months and like it made people like I guess really stress out from the
Yeah.
experience of recovery housing, so trying to use more flexible dollars to see so we are I think we're starting it with like our first or we have like two clients I think that will be going in next month or this month. So we'll be trying it for the first time to see if we could have a better bridge.
That'd be good. That's great. I mean, that whole thing about when you come out of detox and you don't even get rehab anymore. You used to get 28 days in rehab, and then you could get what we used to call in New York long-term care. For a year and a half, you lived in
Hmm.
residential program like Daytop or Good Samaritan with these great programs, and that's all gone. And people have addictions for years, and we're going to give them 5 days in detox, and that's going to change the
right,
world.
Yeah.
It's
right.
really much more complicated. So I love that idea, Sarah, about giving people a chance in recovery housing, using the flex funds, and trying to make relationships with any recovery services. I mean, now because of the opioid use settlement, right, there is some resources for people who have addictions, which I'm sure I heard already is almost all full, but there may be some turnover in that, but it is really hard to stay sober on the streets. I mean, it is. It's almost impossible. Some people we worked with, it was like a break. They did it every 6 months. They, cleaned up for a few days. And then, the liver was detoxed enough to go back, right? Just a sad thing. So trying to support that sobriety because people will have more choices in where they live, right? If they have some sobriety and they'll maybe be able to do some work and stuff like that. So well, thanks you guys for this conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Andrea, who's going to pick up on sort of the key roles. If we're going to implement this vision, value, and goals, what are the roles people have in doing this work? So what's your job, which, as we have already said, is a very, very big job.
Thanks, Suzanne. So one of the things that Suzanne mentioned previously is a big role of the outreach worker is to sort of figure out who's living in your area, right? Who's living in the geographic area? Is somebody living in those woods behind this store? Is somebody, right? And that includes sort of canvassing, it includes maintaining partnerships, particularly with law enforcement and other people who may know who's in the woods, with other outreach teams. As Suzanne said, we all work as a team. And it's also responding to referrals, and it also includes inreach, is going out and looking, right? If you hear somebody's there, or if there's activity sort of at where the woods end, how are you going to figure out there? It's also about making contact and establishing trust with people, establishing credibility, it says here, absolutely. And figuring out what people can get from you in order for them to make a relationship with somebody. They want to know what the relationship is about, what's offered, that sort of stuff. So it's about trust. It's about consistency, as Jose said. It's about, um, being reliable. It's showing up.
You're bomb. Thank you so much.
Okay. Um, it's also about demonstrating kindness and hopefulness, right? We can be helpful, but it's also about role, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's also about people understanding what they can come to you for. So part of this is we're going to provide housing focused case management so that we're going to help people assess their needs. We're going to help people develop a housing and a service plan. And I realize this is tough because it came up a couple more times in the slides. There's not a lot of housing out there. It's more of a process. We're really trying to identify what's available to people, and it may not be the best option, but it's having those conversations about what are the things that they really want, what are the things that they really need, what are the things they wanted to go to detox, so that what happens? Maybe a recovery house would be helpful to them at that point, and offering those sorts of solutions. Also, going back with family and helping to work out that sort of thing and being honest about the process. It's also coordinating with partners to move people to the housing. Part of that is the CAN, and part of that is helping prioritize people for what system options there are available. We are well aware that there are not enough system options in order to serve everybody. And as Suzanne said, if it was up to us, we would give everybody a voucher. But you know what? There are just not enough vouchers. There are just not enough system options. So it's making sure that the people most in need are prioritized. It's working with a CAN towards that, but it's also doing the other stuff. It's also helping people understand what they're choosing, right? Is that these are options, but if people get there and say, "Oh, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'm only here because my case manager made me do it." It's helping people make affirmative decisions in their lives, which is part of the problem-solving process, but also helps people maintain housing. And I think as outreach workers, one of our focus is not only to help people access those needed resources, but also to maintain them. It's providing that aftercare. And as Suzanne said, there's follow-up available through outreach. And you know what? There is nothing more important to people than that relationship with that outreach worker, because they're the person who first tried to make their life better. And there's a real bond there. And when people see people like from outreach and housing, that's really important to them. It's other things, as we talked about self-care. It's really important to the outreach worker to see people in another context, to see them in housing. And, it brings tears to my eyes about how proud people were when I ran housing, when their outreach worker came around. They couldn't wait to show them their cabinet, right? Look, I have all this food that I can pull. I mean, it just, right? Because people are proud and they identify the things that are important to them. It's also that warm handoff with the worker. It's vouching for them, and it's lending some of that trust and some of that engagement. It's helping people feel safe and being aware of risk to safety and really employing some harm reduction techniques, right? Because there are a lot of risks about being in housing. It's also helping people identify those risks, which is usually part of a harm reduction process, and addressing their behaviors so they can mitigate those risks. It's also, collecting data to being able to say it. It's entering accurate data into HMIS, DDAP, the Engage app, the PIT count, so that we can do some planning about who needs what. And you guys have all that information, and it's really important to share it. Look, I know that, entering into the Engage app is probably not making your day, but you know what? And everybody would much rather hang out with people and listen to the story of their life, right? But we need to enter that data because that's how some things are based, right? And that's how resources are based. And in order to get these resources, they've got to realize who you're dealing with and what are their needs. So that's been really important. So the workers have a big job, right?
And
Okay.
we'll talk more about some of the data stuff later. I know some of you that will be fun for and some not. But I will just give a shout out. The Engage app is new. I know we have a bunch of new people here. And even for people who've been around, it might be new, to make sure you're checking out and getting resources around training for that.
Yep. Good point.
Because the Engage app, you can enter data right when you're on their phone out in the street, so not maybe when you're talking to someone, but when you're on your way about to go back, before you don't have to get all the way back to the office to put information in. So I know a lot of people wanted it, and hopefully it's helping with, saving you some time. And it always takes a little longer if you wait to do your notes. That's what I found.
So we've given you some links to the standards. We've also talked a little bit about the standards, but which statement about the Connecticut street outreach standards is most true for you? Remember, Suzanne showed that slide with the standards on it. Today's the first time I'm hearing about the standards. I knew something about the standards before today, but not yet using them in my day-to-day work. I'm very familiar with the standards and using them regularly with some frequency. I'd like to learn more about the standards. And then if you can just please type something in the chat. Okay. So I see people are doing this. Ooh, you're quick on this one.
People are ready for this poll.
Yeah.
But while people are answering the poll, I'm just going to read. Melissa made a request to talk to someone Melissa Cameron, that the Engage app worked for. I've had nothing but problems. I know there is Molly had to step off the meeting, and I wanted to just thank her for being here. And I also wanted to remind everybody that we do have a quarterly outreach meeting with Demas, and it's a really important time to bring up the things you need, the pain points. Molly's been feeding us information of things that are coming up from different agencies to make sure we cover in the trainings. And I know I've heard the same thing, that people have had issues with the Engage app, and utilization is not really where it is. So let's fix that, because they spend time and resources giving you something. Okay. And,
The other
and Jace
question was,
Liz is asking, how do you get the app? Yeah. We'll have that I think it's session 2. We'll have those resources for you at the next session of the training.
Mhm.
But hopefully somebody else in your agency might have it in the meantime. So here we go. We got 45 of you answered. How many of you this is new for? That makes sense. A lot of you are only in your first 3 months on the job, about 10%, about 16%. I know something about the standards, but not yet using them in my day-to-day work. About 56%, a little more than half, are very familiar, using them regularly, great, with some frequencies. I'd like to learn more about the standards. Well, that we will do. Oh, I'm not sharing the results. Sorry about that. I am sharing them now, and you can see those. So this is great, and they've been out for a while, and we will be talking about them in the sessions. And I want to again encourage you also, because we are supporting you guys with trainings, and we're doing new trainings every year. So this is a training that we offered last year that we've made some revisions to, but we will be also doing more and new trainings to make sure you share those, share the things you need with us by talking directly to us, or by telling Molly, or in bringing it up in the outreach meeting. We are going to be there to hear any questions. Okay. So I think,
Going to pick up on engagement.
yeah, I just want to make sure I took down the poll. I'll do that while you get into engagement.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit. One of the things you want to do is the primary goal is to develop some sort of relationship, some sort of working relationship with the person. But the primary goal of developing that relationship is create a why for them about why to engage with you, right? People have to have a reason to engage with people. And the fact that you're a nice person is a good reason to initially engage, but you want them to enter into something where they know where they can come to you for. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about what people are dealing with, right? People are coming out of trauma, which is huge. They've witnessed a lot of violence. All homeless people have witnessed a lot of violence. Most of us have witnessed violence. Oftentimes there's been emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse, medical neglect, right? People might have been sick for a long time, which really erodes trust and feeling it. Sexual or physical abuse, poverty. Those are all things that affect how people engage with people and how they look at relationships in the future. Trust is hard for people. And you know what? Not trusting is probably a good coping skill. So we've got to overcome all of that. We've got to be trustworthy. We've got to be aware of what people are coming to us with, um, and that it's going to take a little time, right? So let's talk a little bit about trauma and homelessness. Or do you want to say
Well, and
something, Suzanne?
yeah, I just wanted to add about how and this is something we're going to talk about in session that we are developing for this year is really around crisis and de-escalation and dealing with people because of all the trauma people have experienced. Very often they may be triggered easily. We may see increasing episodes of aggression or like the littlest thing, and many of you are veterans so you know this, the littlest thing can set someone off and it can be really scary. And I think since we do have a lot of new folks in the room, I think the gentler we can be is the most, like, the thing I would take from the slide is the gentler we can be, the better off we'll be. But even then, some people will be triggered because they've been through so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
know I had clients who had all of this. I know I had clients who had all of this, every single bubble plus more,
Me
plus a head
too.
injury on top of it, right? And
Yeah.
maybe an addiction on as well. So folks are really bringing a lot to the relationship.
Those are really, by the way, head injuries are really common. And that can affect how people respond to people. And yeah, the trauma and the substance can affect it too. So, as Suzanne said, people are triggered by all sorts of things. It may be a memory, it may be a remembered feeling, it may be a smell, it may be something that triggers a feeling of unsafety, and that can really have all sorts of effects. And we don't always know what's triggering people. It's not always predictable to us. Sometimes it's not predictable to them. But most people that we work with have experienced some sort of trauma. And that what that can interfere with, we talked about that, is people's feeling safe. And it's hard for people to think, it's hard for people to problem solve, which is the core of what we do with people when they don't feel safe. So we want to help people feel safe as much as possible. I also want to mention that when people go into housing, usually their number one goal, though they may not be able to say it, is to feel safe. So really paying a lot of attention to that sense of safety. People also want to not be out of control. They want not to have people take over their lives because that has not worked out well for them. They want some self-efficacy. They want to be able to, understand what's happening, and they want to be able to make decisions in their own behalf. They want to be supported in those decisions. And I think that that's a big part of planning with people is to help people try different methods that are important to them or have worked for them in the past, and decide for themselves whether it works for them in this situation, unless they're overtly dangerous. It can also affect interpersonal relationships and the ability to self-regulate. And what I mean is that Suzanne referred to something about sometimes people are very reactive. Sometimes people do something that we used to call skying up, is that they go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds and you sort of can't figure out what happened. Uh, and that you want to just deal with that when it happens. You want to help people calm down. You want to focus on that. And excuse me, it may not always be so predictable, but when people are not in a such high elevated adrenaline state, we want to help them talk about sort of what happened and what made them so uncomfortable, but not in the middle of it. Then you want to sort of de-escalate, you want to help people calm down. You also want to use the principles. You want to always emphasize safety. We talked about that. We want to be as predictable as possible, right? People should know what's going to happen. When we go to meet with people in their encampment or when they're come to meet with us, they should know what's going to happen. They should know what we can provide. We want to be as predictable and as consistent, as you guys said, as possible. We also want to really emphasize that it's their choice. The real truth is we really can't make anybody do anything unless it's a really dangerous situation and then we have some tools. But usually we're in a position where people have to make their own decisions and we want to really support that because that's something that's going to be important to them. So we want to really emphasize that it's their choice and help people rebuild a sense of control and that they can have a sense of control. It's also, we talked about being aware of triggers, avoiding re-traumatization, and just being aware that some of this stuff is unpredictable to us and may not be conscious with them. There may be things that trigger people that they don't really know about, they can't really share with you, or they may not trust you enough to share it with you. So we want to try to, from our own experience and from observations and from what people tell us, is sort of avoid those triggering situations, but also be aware that there will be situations where people are triggered and we want to be prepared to deal with it. And finally, we want to assist people to identify what they're good at. We want to build their confidence. We want to build their feelings of competence. We want to build their skills because that goes to self-efficacy. That goes to control. That goes to predictability, is that if people know what their tools are and what they can do, and really feel supported in that, that's a really important thing to fight that sort of trauma and feeling out of control feeling, which is oftentimes the most triggering thing for people. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and I guess because it's a Connecticut story that we tell, and it was at I think at the ATI where this person was recognized. He was a case manager now, and he had
Yeah.
been homeless on the street. And I think I always think about what he said when he got his recognition
Yes.
was that people believed in me until I started to believe in myself. And I think giving people that belief that they can be successful, that they can do it. People don't are not coming to us with that. They're coming to us with, I can't do anything usually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a real lack of confidence, feeling like they're a failure, that the world tells them a failure, and our ability, even though I know, and I think about some of the people I met, I went on an outreach last year in Hartford, thanks to that team. And, people are have a lot of stuff going on, but they have some strengths, right? And recognizing the strengths they have. Um, because they're not always connected at all with that. And in order to go forward, you got to have some gas in your tank, right? As the client, right? For them to make change or do hard things, we can do hard things. Well, if you're going to do hard things, you have to feel like you can do hard things. So that communication of our belief is so important. And when you're trying to hire outreach staff, people say, well, why would I do outreach? I could work at Target and make the same amount of money. Well, you do outreach because your heart's in it, right? You want to help people,
Mm-hmm.
it is different from working at Target, and that compassion for people and belief in people is a part of the secret sauce. It's what makes outreach work, right? Is that belief and that relationship and that person knowing that you really mean it when you say they can do better in their lives and that they have done better and they have skills.
It's a great segue. You really mean it, right? So when you're building the relationship, you want to be yourself, and people know if you're being authentic. So let's be real. People know if you're bullshitting them, right? Because being wary has what's been protected them to the extent that it could protect them largely for their whole lives, right? So that being very real and making these things very real and supporting people and admiring what they are able to do and really helping people to identify that is critical for the person to move on, but also to develop that relationship. The other way we show that is we keep showing up. And then when we say we're going to do something, like come back tomorrow, we do it. And that's the predictability that is so important. If you want people to develop trust, it has to be a predictable contact. They're not going to trust somebody who doesn't show up. And if you listen to people, a lot of people, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, is they always have complaints about a case manager who left. Sometimes they left the job, sometimes they got transferred, sometimes everything else happened. And that if you don't show up for one appointment, people are going to do it. It doesn't mean you're always like nothing's going to happen, but then you send somebody or you make sure that people understand what the reason was, that sort of thing. You also listen to what the person wants and what they care about. And you ask those questions all the time. And you look for the real felt feelings. We do a lot of work on goal setting with all sorts of groups who work with homeless people. And we have something called the So That principle. And people sometimes come in and tell us what we want to hear, right? Like, I want housing. Okay, first of all, let's be clear. People aren't saying, I want to fill out every application. I want to find all my ID. I want to do all that stuff, right? They don't really understand the process. But what they really want is maybe a chance to get their kids back, right? And they think housing might help them with that, or a chance to reunite with their family, or a chance to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a chance to get a car. Those are all things that people really feel, and we really want to pay attention to that and not dismiss that. Because if we do dismiss that, and people feel like that's automatically coming with housing, when they get housing in a couple of months, they're mad because they have no job, they don't have a, right? So what happens? So we want to really deal with that. But also, that keeps people's motivation high when they have to do all the things that they have to do in order to access and keep housing. The other thing is be patient, right? They know what the goals of the program are, and we're going to explain the goals of the program. But we don't assume that those are their goals, but we want to know how those goals can work together with what people's goals are. So we want to be careful about that. We want to be trauma informed, and we talked about that. We want to find something to work on together where people can lead the way. We want to listen to the way that people want to try things, and we want to stay with them through the process so they can evaluate if that's the best strategy for them. We want to start out with small things and we want to keep it simple. We want people to experience some success, right? And it may not be the thing that's most important to us at that point, but it may be something that's important to them. And just checking it out about how we work together, that's very important. And that builds a relationship. We want to make sure that people's basic needs can be met and make sure that we can provide assistance with food, clothing, gear, hygiene, disease prevention supplies, documents, those sorts of things, and make sure that people know those are available from us. That we'll work with them to get those things. And we also want to present housing as a way to get something people want. But in order to do that, we have to know what people want. And we have to have those conversations. Does it take longer? Yes. Is it more effective? Yes. Right? Okay.
I know, we've talked about substance users, and that can be particularly complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because the substance is number one, right, in people's lives when they have severe addictions. And it can be really hard for people to connect to something they want. And that's the challenge of outreach, is finding things beyond survival or beyond feeding that addiction, which is equivalent to survival when you have a serious addiction, right? And so I just want to give a shout out again, right, that helping people get their methadone helps them be able to think about something else, because otherwise they're only thinking about getting high, right? So just want to call that out because I know in particular, people are challenged by people with mental illness and people are challenged with addiction. And when you go, if you have an addiction, you go into housing, you don't have any money to use to feed your addiction, right? You're doing things and many ways to do it. And so it can take a long time, as Andrea said, and that for people to recover a sense of that there is life beyond what they have now, right? Takes a while.
Absolutely. And that those sorts of experiences can really affect how people engage. The other thing is, how you're treated as a substance user, how you're treated as a person with mental illness is really important. We also want to pay a lot of attention to how does race affect the way that people treat you and what your expectations are. How about gender? How does that affect it? Ethnicity, um, and how that can impact engagement, not only with us, but with other systems that we're going to join people with, and also what people's expectations of getting help are. These are going to have huge consequences, and we want to talk that through. We want to change some of that narrative, right? But that we also want to really pay attention to this has been people's experience. We want to offer people as many choices as possible, and we want to talk about opportunities. We want to talk about how that can work for them and really recognize that every option doesn't work for every person, and that really reiterate as much as we can that we want this to work for them. And in order to do that, we have to work together. The other thing is we want to provide comfort whenever we can, right? We talked about when people are scared or when people are don't feel safe, it's hard for them to concentrate. The other thing is that, when people feel uncomfortable or they're in pain, it's really hard for people to concentrate. And we want to pay attention to those things and how they're affecting people. I mean, obviously, paying attention to comfort and relief goes well beyond being able to concentrate. It goes beyond it goes to a human experience, and we want to help people do that. But it's all part of that safety, it's all part of that, and that people are often in unbelievable pain, and that it really affects how we can, offer services and how things can be offered to people that they may not work for people, right? I mean, for instance, we heard about a story in a person in outreach who had some accidents and had broken a lot of bones, and they were using a lot of substances, and they were talking to them about possibilities to get some treatment. And the thought that they wouldn't be able to use alcohol to, get rid of some of the pain was terrifying to them, right? And that they had to have that conversation and they had to get some help with some of the pain first so that, relief is really important. It also is a priority for people. I mean, the truth is, it's going to be different than our priorities. Let's face it. If somebody's very psychotic and somebody's got a hurty foot, what's going to be first for them? Hurty foot, right? What's maybe first for us? What our perception might be is it's a psychosis, but we have to listen to what's people's most painful. And sometimes it is a psychosis. But if it's the hurty foot, we got to pay attention to the hurty foot and realize that getting some help for the hurt foot might actually convince people that they might be able to get some help for the psychosis down the road, though it won't be immediate. Um, we want to help people to ask for help. We want to ask for help. We want to do clinical consultations. We cannot know everything. And that, we might be able to plan the best approach to people. We've also got to be clear. We're not going to treat a lot of these conditions, but we can get people to the right person, and we can help people identify what might be helpful to them, which is a huge step forward. And so we want some help to do that. So we always want a clinical consultation. If you don't have a clinician in your family, in your agency, in your family too, mobile crisis team have been able to provide case consultation. And if that's not happening with your mobile crisis team, you want to connect with Molly, or you want to connect with Molly about how to ask your mobile crisis team. But they have been willing to come out on a consultation. Has anybody used that service? No. But David, you have some clinical resources within your agency, right? You're muted.
Yeah, we have a clinician.
Yeah.
She works primarily in housing, but is available
Yeah.
to us as needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I know a
making
number
those
of you who
resources.
also made relationships with medical mobile
Mm-hmm.
vans and medical care, and that's a way to help people get that relief from pain or illness or sickness, things that are going on, so that they can think about getting housing. Because if you're in pain and you have so many things going on, she was schizophrenic, and she did recording, and I'm gonna have to look it up. It was a couple days ago. She did a recording of someone trying to have a conversation with her about an application for a service while she was hearing all these voices in her head and what that sounded like to her, right? So I thought it was a great example of where we are thinking, okay, well, this is a pretty straightforward application. We just need to answer a few questions. But what is going on inside of that person may make it almost impossible for them to even have that conversation.
So there's a question in the chat. What's Molly's information? How do you get in touch with Molly? At the end of this PowerPoint, there are emails for everybody, and Molly's is in there. So it's the last page of the PowerPoint. The other thing is to, build confidence and trust. We talked about that, as many choices as possible, but we also have to seek information. We want to get as much information as we can. Have a conversation with the EMS guys, get the EMS information. HMIS, CANS, hospitals, healthcare providers, police, any mainstream service providers. Most people who you're going to see on outreach maybe have had contact with a shelter, maybe have contact, maybe been in housing before. You want to ask about those experiences and see if you can talk to people about that.
If I want to add too, our local public health provider has health workers too, so we're
Great.
we're pretty closely with them. I don't know
Great.
how it's in
Community
other
health
parts of the
workers, that's
state.
great, David.
Yeah, and
Yep.
David, don't you guys do a meeting every month where you meet all together, everybody who has contact with an outreach staff?
oh, we have many meetings. Yes, so there's a New London Human Services Network, and then once a month, primarily New London health workers, recovery people, and us. And then in the other towns too, it varies from town to town. We cover
Yeah.
Stonington, Groton, and
But a
Waterford.
lot of people have that, and that helps with the communication. It helps making those
Yeah,
contacts,
no, we're
right?
we're
Oh, and
yeah,
M. Martell wrote, oh, sorry, go
well
ahead, David.
networked, well networked.
Well
Yeah,
networked. Yes, the eastern part, we know all of you guys have amazing things going on in outreach. I
Yeah.
just want to say it's a
yeah.
little different in every region. And M. Martell wrote in the chat that Mobile Crisis in Torrington came out to provide support for staff for dealing with the death of a client. So thank you for sharing that.
That's really helpful. And that's a really wonderful thing to see. So that's a really creative way to use it. And I bet was it helpful to you? I bet. So you want to have them as much contact as possible. And finally, we want to keep our promises. Yes, says M. Martell. Okay, good.
Oh, and I think that getting hospital records, and I think this is standard practice in a lot of fields, is to request the records. A lot of people who have mental illness have been hospitalized. So you can get diagnostic information, you
Yep.
can get a psychiatric evaluation, which may give you a window in and some additional information to figure out what's going on with people. And I think one of the things I see, I feel is so helpful when we're working with these complex folks because they've touched many systems, is to make sure if we have a release, that we can get the information from those other systems so that we know really what has gone on. And another article I just read this week is that homeless people are 10 times more likely to have a head injury than the general population.
Yep.
And
I
that's
believe that.
another under assessed and under addressed. I would say both under assessed and under addressed issue, because that may be layered on top of substance use, on top of mental illness, on top of maybe diabetes or high blood pressure, some physical stuff, and a lot of things that happen as a result of brain injuries. It can mimic mental illness, it can mimic addiction, it can be really complicated. Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to break people up into groups. It's going to be pretty much the same groups as before. It's 10 minutes. I know that's probably not long enough, but we'll certainly consider that the next time. And want to ask you to discuss a person you had difficulty engaging but ultimately connected with. So, what did you see as the barriers initially, and how did you overcome those barriers? So, this is really a case study about how you engage somebody who you initially thought might be difficult to engage.
Hey, the rooms are open. Hopefully, everybody can connect.
And he's been up in the middle of the woods, and he was really upset that I had found him. So I had shared just a little bit of story how there was another encampment very close to him. I developed a good rapport with them, started to work on developing a relationship. Them two were pretty much friends. So through word of mouth, it opened up the door with the other gentleman to allow me to start having conversations, which then allowed me to start just going with no agenda and bringing soap, bringing water,
Yeah.
bringing toilet paper, whatever it may be, seeing what his needs were, demonstrating a sense of consistency to be able to follow through, um, which developed some trust. And ultimately, throughout time, this gentleman about 3 weeks ago now has a housing voucher. He was willing
Wow.
to step into that. So it took some time for sure. It took an immense amount of work and to build that trust, but it all begun with consistency, being authentic, and
Yeah.
which allowed the word of mouth. I like to say that this community is the homeless wide web. So the community just knows each other and it spreads really quick. So your reputation, your consistency, um, the dignity and that trust that you build, it's going to spread. And you're really in control of that. So it starts with that key of authenticity. That's where it has to begin from my perspective.
A great point, Jason. And I think the great we used to say the grapevine, the World Wide Web has nothing on the homeless grapevine. That's what
I'll
we used to
say.
say. And that your people who come to trust you will tell two people and they'll tell two people and then tell two people. And it really does spread. It is a people do it's like a warm handoff, but oh, Jason, he's okay. He helped me out. You could trust him. But I think it's also a really go ahead, Dave. Jason, you were gonna say something?
No, 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 no. I hit the button. My apologies.
No, it's okay. But I think that reflection that people have had so many relationships that did not, would they don't do not trust people anymore because they were promised things or people didn't show up or things didn't happen. All of that comes to our new relationship, right? Every experience that people had before us is there when they engage with us. Is she going to be like them? Is she going to promise me stuff and or quit her job all of a sudden and be gone or right? Any of these things not follow through. So all of that history comes with us, even though we didn't bring it.
Tommy sent you a message. He was saying great work. That's amazing. Wait,
Yeah,
Jason, you gave him a chance that he never would have gotten otherwise, and that's a beautiful thing. Warms my heart.
Yeah, me too.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that very much.
Yes.
Anybody else have anything they want to shout out for the good and welfare of all? Your texts
I
and your
also want to
emails
say
are
something
starting to back
about
up. So
huh, helping people, valuing people, and having people come sort of. I always said that nobody I worked with, we ever came first in anybody's life. And at least when I was with them, I wanted them to come first. And I think you really showed that. And that's really important in that one of the things that I noticed, and you probably have too, is that's something people carry with them and it makes other things possible. So it's a wonderful engagement story, but it's also a story about bringing hope to somebody.
okay. We know that your emails are backing up, your texts are probably coming in. There's people who need you. We're in the home stretch. It won't go over in the trainings. That's our promise to you. So I'm going to do a little speed talking here for the next few minutes, just really to uh, point out a couple of tools. I think, most of you probably passed day one engagements with people, but how do we know we're successful in engagement is that the person wants to meet with us again. And maybe it's just for socks, or maybe it's just for a sandwich, and that's as far as they'll let us in, but that's a beginning, right? And so in terms of kind of keeping up the momentum, we want to make sure we're engaging with people as quickly as we can. The standard in the standards is within 24 hours of the referral, and then to try and connect again within another 48 hours. I know people move. People are there one day and then they're not there the next day. So that may be hard to do, but we want to demonstrate to people that we care about them. We can set up a time, say, or have them say, I'm always at the soup kitchen on Wednesdays. Let's meet again there. But we also want to follow through. If we said we were going to make an appointment or get a resource, that's where people's trust has been blown up in the past, where people said they were going to do something and they didn't. And then we already talked about warm handoffs. And Jason's story was a great story because it was about him getting a warm handoff from another client who led the
Mm-hmm.
other person to see that he was okay. In the standards, there are tools, and we want to point out that there are tools there. So, there's some this is actually, it's hard to see here unless you have a big screen, but this is a tool that's actually in the standards of a checklist, and we have a few checklists in there, things to do after during and after the first contact. Before I leave the thing, did I offer something to the person? Did I do a scan for emergency needs, right? So some things just to make sure, did we see, well, like maybe a dressing that needs to be changed, or sort of a woman who on outreach, she had a really, really severe infection that really needed urgent care. And so you want to make sure there's no emergency needs. And then really looking, did the person talk to me? Did I ask about stuff like if they need ID? Because that can be, did I ask them if they need money or they have money? Did I ask if they have military service, right? This is just an extract from that tool. There's a few other questions in there. But why do we want to ask about military service? Because the VA has a lot of resources, right? So, and a lot of times people are unaware that they're eligible for VA services for various reasons, not the least of which it's very complicated to understand who is
Hmm.
eligible for these services. We want to make sure we check that. And then we want to, in terms of being client-centered, because outreach and engagement can take a while with some folks. Sometimes people are not going to engage for it may take months. We want to offer services in different ways, different times of day. They can meet us somewhere, we'll come out, those kinds of things. We want to understand why people won't go into shelter, right? And that can be hard. We had a situation, the person was actually interviewed on the radio in New York City because we had some really big blizzards, and the guy was like, I don't want to go into shelter because I have everything I need here. And that's what he said, outside. So that was an important perspective to understand, right? Because he probably doesn't have everything, but that's his perspective. So he's not going to go into shelter. We can talk about shelter till we're blue in the face. We need to take a different angle. We want to help people solve the things that are most important to them. Like Andrea said, the hurdy foot, that's number one. Seeing my daughter again, maybe that's my number one priority. Making sure that other service providers are providing what they need. So I think I heard a little bit early on that it's difficult to get some mental health services. And again, just want to reiterate that Molly is a really active partner in this process. She works at TMS. She knows people. She really wants to hear about challenges. So let her know, as Andrea said, her email's here. There's a quarterly outreach meeting. Make sure either you're there or whoever goes from your agency, if you need to advocate. And you may need to look at if you're needing services and you're not getting them in your can, maybe as a collective, as all the providers working together to think about maybe making relationships with new or meeting on the managerial level about services that you need and figuring out how you might make those available. Oh, Molly's back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. Hi, Molly. Welcome back. She said, please send me specifics around cases where you're having issues connected with mental health. And she put her email in there. So thanks, Molly. And then also helping people with some temporary accommodations. That may be a bridge, that may be a way that they can stabilize. We just heard the example from Hartford that Sarah gave about getting people placed in a recovery house if they just come out of detox. And then also thinking about pets. Pets is not as big of an issue in Connecticut, although it is an issue. And we do have a session on pets. It's recorded now. We're planning to do it live to maybe later in the year. But so many people coming inside means bringing their pet, and that can be a barrier to coming inside. So we want to understand if they have that. There's also another tool in here about homework between contacts. And again, before you left the engagement, did we do things? Did I talk about the plan to end homelessness? Have things changed? Did I talk about coming back? Did I talk about when they can see me? I think that, yes, when you're living outside, life is organized very differently, right? Times of day, where you go, you have to get things, you need a shower, you need a meal, you need to get away from those people who come and bother you every day at 3 o'clock. Um, did you talk to them about how you can get together again and how they can find you? And did I also talk about benefits and income? I think income is also like pain. Getting some money can be something that people may be willing to engage about. I know that for most single adults, there's really no benefits unless they're disabled and considered disabled. And even then, I'm not sure how easy it is to get SAGA anymore. But food stamps are a resource, and or food pantry or food bank where they might be able to get a meal. And then we want to write down, and it says within 72 hours, but so I get a little older in life, I think, well, I wait 72 hours to do something, it's pretty much gone. So as quickly as possible, you want to make a note um on any follow-up or whatever you promise to that person so you can keep your promise. And it's really about using documentation so that we that guides the work, that records the work. Not extensive, we don't need extensive narratives in there, but we definitely want to know to-do items and things we promised. I will say, Molly, since you're back, there was some comment about the Engage app, and we'll talk about it more in a future session, but folks are having some challenges with that, and we'll follow up with you. So, to stay on time, I love this line. We are all just walking each other home. That's what we're doing here. And there's some very amazing and important work that you're doing. And just to sum up a few of the points, the trust, you guys picked up on that. It's the foundation of the work. If you don't have a relationship with person, it's really hard to do anything, right? And housing is the goal. But we also have to allow for time to engage with people, understand the trauma, previous experiences with service providers, the way a person's feeling or thinking, what's going on in their head affects the relationship and can make it take a while to get connected. So we want to be consistent, kind, helpful, compassionate, focus on what people really want. And don't forget that the standards is everyone's requirement. It is a requirement, so wanted to just put a plug in that. If you haven't looked at them, they're linked in these slides. Hopefully you have the slides. Take a look at this. And we have so much appreciation, deep appreciation for your work and respect for what you do. And it really is our honor to be engaging these conversations with you. And Andrea and I both loved the conversations we had today. So thank you for
Yes.
sharing.
You guys make our day.
You do. You make our day. And we've got, here's our upcoming webinars. They've all been, you're getting multiple emails about them. Our next one is March 17th, which is next week. Then we have a break on the 24th, and we'll come back on March 31st. So that's upcoming. The community of practice schedule, Andrea does these. The next one's April 2nd. That's a chance to talk about stuff that comes up in the work. And the quarterly outreach meetings, which Molly, I think, was just putting in the chat.
Yep, she did just put in the chat that Nutmeg is going to go to the next meeting.
Okay, great. Nutmeg will be at the next meeting. Let her know if you need the invite, but here you have it in the slides. And what else do we have? There is a training inventory of web-based trainings that are available. Many of you are very new. I know you got to do some outreach. You can't be in training all day, but there are lots of trainings. So if you link to this, then you're also going to link to a lot of different trainings that may be helpful in your work. And then there's just some resources, written resources that you might find helpful. And the last thing is our contact information. So Molly and Brenda from Demas are up top, and then our Housing Innovations crew. There's a lot of us working on the outreach project because we're doing monitoring, we're doing tools, we're doing trainings. So reach out anytime if you have anything you want to want or need to bring up. So Andrea and I are going to say thank you.
Yes,
We're
thank you.
going to stop recording and say that we'll see you the next time. And thank you for